record on this computer. Okay, perfect. All right, so we're recording and we are with Lisa, and she is from Eugene. She teaches Spanish, and currently the curriculum you are using, go ahead and tell us about.
We're using the Wayside, the EntreCulturas curriculum in our 1 through 5 classes, and I pull from some of the subject area in my 10th grade immersion with a lot of scaffolding to meet their needs, to meet the push them higher.
So I'm just wondering if so when you went through, were you part of the team when you did the?
I was part of the piloting, the process of doing.
Well, that's even extra helpful.
And then to the piloting, so the before, during, and after. Yeah,
that's awesome. Okay, so I didn't add these questions to the sheet, the document that we're taking notes on, because I didn't know that. But now that you mentioned that, you know, as I mentioned before, it's kind of a toss-up right now between Vista and Wayside. So did you see that happening in your process when you were looking into adopting?
It did. A lot of it was probably 50-50 that there were parents, oh my gosh, it's a long week, teachers who very much liked the setup of Vista. It felt similar to what we had used before. And then there were teachers who really liked Wayside because it aligned with how I think they just appreciated the culture is so strong in the book, and it's included continually. It's always a part of the lessons, and that continual self-reflection the students have to do along the way. And this, I think it feels like traditional books that teachers have used before.
So if you're able to, do you think, I don't know if you have it pulled up or anything, but would it be possible to share your screen and just tell us, like, what are some of your favorite features, or you can just tell us too?
Yeah, I don't have it, but for Wayside, I like the cultural part of it. It already, like, activities that I had always done as a teacher, I actually saw in there. So it aligned with how my approach to culture, to have kids try to figure out things ahead of time without just, here's your list, learn these words, or here's this grammar thing, have them try to figure it out from the authentic readings that they're doing or the videos. And it's like the real stuff they need. Whereas with Vista, it felt there are some good themes. I think they both line up well for AP and IB programs. You can make them work. But in the chapters with Vista, it always felt that every piece of the unit didn't necessarily work together, that there maybe, like, the video didn't match what this reading was, but with the Wayside, everything is tied together from the very beginning to the end of the unit, to the IPA the students end up doing.
Yeah, I was really excited about the IPAs when I saw them. I felt like that was a very authentic way to assess our students. And that'll be one of the questions on here, but I'll ask you a little bit more about that. But if you could just maybe tell us a little bit about the IPA and how that will, that looks like, and how that functions well for your students.
Right. Yeah. So, like, my students just did we just finished a unit on healthy life, having a balanced life. So talking about, and it was based in Colombia, doing foods and activities in Bogota. And the students, by the end of the unit, were able, it was like a food truck activity where they had to put together, there was a speaking component where they essentially were sharing plans that they had put together for their own food truck, but they had to argue for the healthy quality of their foods, but making connections to what they had learned about Colombian foods. They also had to think about activities based on, do you guys know what the ciclovia is in Bogota, like the biking exercise out in public? So they had to incorporate that, but make it for their own community. And it's really lovely to watch students who have had COVID classes for two years where they just haven't had as much. But yesterday they had to present, but then comment to each other and give suggestions. And it didn't seem like that kind of rehearsed language that you sometimes get with those kinds of exams. And I mean, it was like goosebump moments to see how everything that they were able to give those recommendations and use that higher level language and really specific vocabulary that they had picked up along the way. So they did, usually there's like an interpretive activity, there's an interpersonal and a presentational, and it varies from unit to unit. And sometimes there is a lot. So sometimes you just have to make the choice I'm not going to have them do the presentational writing this time. We'll save that for the next unit, and maybe we'll just focus on presentational speaking in this one, depending on how they have it set up in Wayside. So you have some freedom if you just can't get to it.
So I'm going to jump to one of the big questions, I think, was, and maybe it has to do with this whole mind shift that we're going through as a district, because we have historically graded reading, writing, speaking, listening, vocab, grammar, and those are the targets that we report out on. And we're making a shift with this adoption to move towards just reporting out on the 3 different categories, the 3 different modes of communication. So we would have 1 score for our interpretive, interpersonal, and our presentational. So thinking about that, it is also requiring this mindset shift. But we also need to have assessments that are going to give us evidence within those categories, so that we can make our summative judgment grades. So can you speak to that a little bit?
I would think that you would have to incorporate a lot of your own along the way, because even within 4J, I think we're going through it different. The idea is that we're all covering the same amount in the same term, but depending on how much language our students are coming into high school, one of our regions, the middle schoolers absolutely have access to taking Spanish, and in other regions, they don't get any language. So students come in a little bit more prepared to jump into higher levels and move a little bit faster. And we have been seeing like 2 units fits into one of our trimesters in Eugene. And so if you're only doing their provided IPAs, that would just give you 2 sets of assessments. So you would want to figure out other ones in between. We still have done different, like doing smaller grammar quizzes along the way. I've done them more where they have to show they can use the vocabulary and the grammar in context. And I have changed the rubrics so they represent more of like how much a student is doing and how accurately, instead of just like you missed a point, you have 19 out of 20 now. So we've done some other rubrics to make that fit.
So it's taken some collaboration among the teachers.
Definitely. Yeah. You definitely have to build in other assessments just like formative assessments along the way to make sure, especially if you want to pull out interpretive, interpersonal, and to have, because right now as it is, we have formative, we have summative, and then we have an in-class component. But for our summatives, they really only end up with 2 units worth of assessments in there. And then the formative would just be the other quizzes that we've made so that we can still give them feedback on activities.
Okay, so these 2 questions are kind of going together, because I think the assessment thing is really the biggest question on the mind of our cadre teachers, and their question is, how do you handle the assessment? So with collaboration with other teachers, you've been able to make other rubrics, but it's not that you have to create more content; it's that you need to have rubrics matching.
And that's the hardest part, I think, like making sure that you have those rubrics and figuring out the right, and I'd be happy to share with you the one that I've used for quizzes, because it's an easy grade too, but lets me give them feedback a little bit faster. But there's a lot in those units, and some things I just have decided they don't really work so well, or maybe they're not engaging. There's a lot to work with, but I still have made a lot to go with it too, that they need some extra practice with this, or I want to put in some more speaking, another just like a back and forth partner activity. So it's, I don't know, with any curriculum, I think you just always have that extra layer of having to add in, but they've done the work of finding all the good videos, finding all the good samples that aren't the typical, there are some actors acting out a scene that books we've seen so much in the past. They're having real student samples talking about their lives, and I don't know, I enjoy the videos they've gone. They're like ones that I have always spent time finding on YouTube, and it just so laborious. It takes up so much time.
Oh, well, I was telling our project team the other day that one of the things that I always spent a lot of time looking for, like you said, is either videos, authentic videos that are engaging too, but also the music.
Yeah.
Do you use some of the music that Wayside offers?
Yeah, the music, well, it's that's one of my little quirk is that they've presented like, here are all these great songs, but then they show them with all the levels. So sometimes then students might have already worked with the song by the time they get it in another book. So that's just like a departmental thing to work out. But no, the music is that's always been a strong, like an important part for a lot of the teachers in our building to have music incorporated. So that's a nice bonus.
Okay, so just like our cadre members have kind of seen as they're investigating, with the assessment piece being that their number one thing, a question really, would you say that's kind of like the biggest challenge that you've come across, or are there other things with Wayside where you're like,
challenges? Well, for the technology part, I think in 4J everybody is using the technology differently. I tend to, within a unit, let's say the units kind of have like they're split up into two halves, in like the second level book and the third level book. And I will pull some of the like the vocabulary activities, maybe for the first part of the unit, and assign them in class. And then I'll do another half later on. I don't typically have them do it at home. I have them do several at a time in class so I can help out. Other teachers in the district are using it on a more regular basis throughout the week, where they do it. I haven't used it as much as other teachers might use it. So there's that flexibility depending on how much you want to.
The technology part, meaning the online platform
and the online platform, because it will have all of like the videos, the listening activities. Lots of times I'll adapt those to do them in class because I want to prep them with the vocabulary ahead of time. I want to scaffold that in before we listen to it, and then just reinforce those strategies of how to approach a listening activity or a video without just cold going in and doing it on their own. But if you wanted to, you could do that too, because they're all there, all those. And they have, since we've adopted it, a lot of the PDFs that come with different activities, those have all been loaded in to the website. Previously, teachers had to, during spring of 2020, teachers had to do all of that themselves, adapt those for the students. So that's been, yeah. And I do have to say the Vista website is a lot stronger than the Wayside one, in my opinion. I used to use the Vista with my immersion and my AP IB class, and their website it's really good.
Yeah, I used it too in my IB classes. And but that's also the other thing, that's hard as a teacher, not to have that in the back of your mind when we're doing an adoption. Well, I've used Vista. I loved using their online thing. I was familiar with it, and it's easy for me to just say that's what I want to adopt because I already have experience. And we're so overwhelmed and busy, and things are crazy right now. It's just I also want to think about new teachers coming on board that have never used any system before. Which one, is going, which, not just system, but which publisher overall is going to give us the resources we need for both our French and Spanish.
Yeah, and when we went through the adoption process, we were doing all languages, but French ended up pushing theirs back a couple of years. Like they just this year decided on what they were going with, and they are going with Vista instead of Wayside. So, and I was when we came down to the final votes, I was pro Wayside, but I was willing to do Vista if that's what everybody wanted. I would have been okay with either, but after working, like certain people who I worked with at the U of O, who actually was one of the writers of the first book, Robert Davis, and just what I believe about language teaching, the Wayside curriculum overall felt to me like the best way to get
that makes sense. Yeah.
But with Vista, I would have done, it would have been okay too.
Okay. Let's see. One of the other questions was about, that might have been a French thing. Do you see that other question on the sheet, Emily? Do you know about that? J'avance. I can say that right. That might be one of the things.
Can't find it. I'm sorry. I'm having
forms of self-testing.
Okay.
I'm not sure that was Karen's question, and I'm sorry, Karen. I don't know how to ask that. Okay, so then another question on here is how much time are you giving to feedback of the ongoing questions for students, both audio and written, that are incorporated into the textbook and online platform? How does feedback look for you?
I think it would depend on the teachers per teacher, and then also how many preps the teacher already has during a day is playing into how much feedback. It depends if you're doing the feedback. I'm going to sound like I think I'm not anti-Wayside or Wayside, but I don't have them record in Wayside as much as I have them record in Canvas now, since it's easier to just keep them all. Wayside does integrate with it, but they already know how to do the Canvas, so I've just kept them there. And lots of times I'll just have them do a quick, like maybe they have questions one week to answer, and then I will either type answer like responses back or just speak to them, give them that kind of feedback online. But it's hard to give lots of feedback all the time, depending on how big classes are, and so you're just gonna have to rotate to see like which class is getting the verbal feedback that week. And
Yeah,
that's a pretty vague answer. It just varies from.
no, but that makes sense because our teachers are also using Canvas at the secondary level. So we're pretty used to giving feedback in Canvas.
Yeah.
And that is another one of the questions about the how well it adapts or integrates with our Canvas and learning management system.
Yeah.
And how easy that is to use, and what are the pros and cons, and has that been working for you guys?
And I haven't done that. I haven't. There are other teachers who have meshed it, but I felt like before COVID, like the first year we were using this, I had the students trained how to go and get the activities, and then I would go and check there. I'm also giving them completion grades for certain activities, for like the practice, the vocabulary ones. So, but there are other teachers in 4J who are having the grades pulled directly from 4J into Canvas. It just last year was not, it was an extra technological challenge that I didn't want students to have to deal with, to have that things not happening correctly for them in Canvas.
Yeah, I mean, because my big question would be on that part is, can we make it so that, and I think it's a matter of, from the learning site, have those grades pull automatically back into Canvas.
Yeah.
And then in Canvas, we're going to have to organize by our 3 targets that we report on. And then we're going to probably have to manually put those different activities that are populating back into our grade book into those categories. Like I think that's what it would end up looking like. And that might be true for both Wayside and Vista. From what I'm hearing from our presenters.
We then are supposed to then like kind of push our grades out then into Synergy too.
That's what we do too.
Which is not matching up right now. No. Right. So I just tell the students, whatever you see in Canvas, like that's really the grade that.
And are you on a 1 through 4 or 1 to 8 scale?
For
grading.
Are
you standard?
We still have traditional, like
90 to 100%.
Yeah. Which I'm like, I want to see how you do it. I want to see.
Oh gosh, maybe you don't. The first time I saw it in action, I was like, what? How do we grade? This is crazy. Because I was an elementary teacher before I moved to high school. And I was like, I don't get it. So, and it gets even more complicated when it's a 1 through 8, but who knows?
A couple of middle schools do grading like that, but the high schools are all still on the traditional A, B, C.
So your percentages are going into Synergy. That's what's happening. Okay. And you're using your scores in Canvas like a portfolio to make those summative judgments in Synergy?
Yeah, well, when we're making summative categories, for that, because we're putting all of our interpersonal and that's just how that was set up by the district for us, that's what we would do. And I have a feeling it might be a little bit different now since like the past 2 years with COVID, that people have maybe tweaked that a little bit to take into consideration what we've been doing, what we were doing last year, at least online.
Okay. I think that's something we'll end up having to figure out.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Let's see. And your grades go into synergy. I can type that in there. And then how do you organize your units of study using Wayside?
Like, are we going in order, chapter by, by unit, or
Yeah,
how?
maybe that's a good way to think about it.
It's, well, I'm trying to think like how far back to go. Our particular region, because we have 4 high schools in our town, and before this we had 2 different curriculums kind of going on. Now we all have the same books, but we have our regions move at a little bit different pace. So we kind of spread out these books, the 4 books, over 5 years at this point, and some groups are doing it a book per level, and then are maybe choosing to get rid of certain units. I know that we're using the entire, like our Spanish level 1 class does units 1 through 5 in the first year, and then we pick up with that last unit and then move them into the next book. So we're kind of going in order, and it is different than, things are being presented in a different order than they had been before, but it seems to be we're getting the same kinds of results with the AP and IB.
Yeah, and I think that would be my other question is, I feel like we saw a lot of resources through Vista that were definitely like practically say APIB on them, right? How do you feel like the Wayside resources, how do they support our IB? And
I've actually I've really enjoyed them. The EntreCulturas Cuatro, the 4th book, I kind of tried to pilot last year online with my students, and it worked really well. And we have, I don't know if Beaverton does it this way, but we have AP and IB together. Their subject matter overlaps to a degree, but the tests are very different.
Right.
So it works that I could have them do some of that AP, that interpersonal, where they have to talk to the computer back and forth. They could do that from that book, but the themes, they matched really well with IB and how we have to analyze photos. So I don't know, I liked that book. I appreciated how that book was set up, that it made it really easy to continue what I already have to do with AP and IB together.
So you're teaching the 2 within the same.
Yeah, and the same, yeah, they're all together.
Well, there you go. Emily, that's the answer to our big question last night. That was our community members were like, well, how is it fair that, if I go to this school, which is not, I don't have a choice, it's in my attendance area, I get to do AP, or if I go to this school, I get IB, but I don't really have a choice. It's just whatever the school offers. But yeah, I don't know. That's interesting.
We've always had it that way. I think all of our other classes, there's a math IB, there is a science IB. Now they used to be together, but languages are still together for everybody. So, and then there are kids who do college now. Everybody can get the college now, the dual enrollment credits, but they're ready for both if they have to. So you have them both available.
Okay.
And there's the Tejidos and I can't remember. There are 2 other books available from Wayside. It just is like the 4th one, that the themes in that one matched what I had been doing in AP and IB, like with the environmental unit. I love, because it leads into climate, refugees, and migration, and then going on to what I do with human rights normally. It just, I don't know, it was really engaging.
Okay, that's helpful. That's good to know. Let's see. This other questions about assessments too. I guess the question is really about what else do you tap into outside of just the text, or is there anything else that Wayside offers that you've used outside of the text or the learning platform, or you just kind of use what they have there?
That, but then just use it like previous things I have made, and making new activities to go along with it, or tweaking old ones to fit in, just to make sure there's enough practice. It's not a book that gives, especially if you've had a program where there's a workbook and here are all these activities to practice a grammar point. Wayside doesn't have that, and that's been frustrating for some teachers. I don't know, I just fill in the gaps where I have to. So there's still that like, I mean, I still sometimes want to go and find other videos to tie in and enrichment. I think just what teachers would normally do anyway, you still do that with the book, but a lot of it is already there. It's not starting from ground zero with no really good sources.
Okay.
You probably have to go pretty soon. I think I put a half hour on us and we are right at the half hour mark. So I don't want to take up too much of your time. Do you think we got enough notes, Emily? How are you feeling about that? This is so helpful. I just want you to know that.
I think there are strong opinions in our department, no matter who, or in our district, no matter, you're probably going to get different things. I like the culture part a lot. I think it's really engaging for kids of all, especially for those kids who sometimes just aren't dialed in all the way. When you start to talk about those cultural pieces, always pull them in and are engaging. And so,
yeah, and I think like what you said, just having the whole unit really like ties together. And I like that about it. And I also see it as like this more holistic approach to language than anything I've ever seen before. And so part of me just, we think about our best practices and our position paper, and everything that we've said in there is that we want our students to have global knowledge and global experience and all of that. And think about, the IB themes obviously go well with that kind of approach to learning, because you're talking about identities and you're talking about the human experience, and you're talking about, and the AP themes as well. It just feels like it's not your traditional approach to language.
Right. Yeah. And it's, I don't know, I work a lot. I work a lot and I put a lot into it, but even knowing what we've gone through and what I've gone through, I would still choose it. I was really worried we weren't going to end up with it. Like just believing like this is really the right one to take, that this is where we should be going. So it was a great relief to end up with it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. Is it okay if I just reach out to you via email if I have any
Oh
follow-up?
yeah, please do.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Lisa. Hope you have a great
Have
weekend.
a good rest of the school year.
Thank you, Lisa. Take care.